What's another name for plane M?
Wait, could it be plane BCD?
Plane B,
I got it.
C, D. Remember, you name a plane by 3 points that are not on the same line in the plane.
Is it fine if you do 4 points or no?
Just 3. So we could also call this plane DCA because it just has to be 3 points that are not on the same line. Name a point on the plane.
A.
Mm-hmm.
C. D.
It could be any of them. So we could just say point A. We could also say point C or point D or point B. But it's just asking us to name 1 point on the plane. Where do line DC and line AB intersect?
C.
Right, at point C. Remember, 2 lines intersect at a point. Where do 2 planes intersect?
Line.
And a line. Yep. Any questions on the first slide? Name a ray with endpoint U.
U. There's many, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wait.
So we have US. How do we name a ray?
With the ram.
Mm-hmm.
But line can be from.
So remember, the endpoint has to be under the endpoint of the little ray that you write on top. And the direction that the ray goes through is where the arrow is on top. So this ray is going through point S, and the endpoint is U. What's another ray?
UT.
Mm-hmm. We have ray UT and ray UV. And notice how all 3 of these start with U because all 3 have the endpoint U. Name a segment on plane R. Somebody else. Adam? What's a segment?
Oh wait. Oh, line sorry. TU.
Remember, we name a segment just by 2 points on the segment. T, V. And we put a segment on top. So rays have a ray on top that starts with the endpoint. Segments are named by 2 endpoints. And lines are named by 2 lines on the 2 points on the line. So if we named a line on this plane, what would we name it? We would name it TV, and we would put a line with 2 arrows on top. So we're naming a line on the plane. So this is how we name a ray, US. This is how we name a segment, and this is how we name a line. What line contains point F? Casey? Right. So we have line L.
There's an L. Yeah.
Right here's where the L is. So we have line L. What's another name we could give line L?
Line G. That's 3.
No, you name a line with 2 points, right? You name a plane with 3 points on the plane. And you name a line with 2 points. So you would call it G F with a line on top. So we have line L or line GF. Where do plane S and plane T intersect?
J. It's line G.
Remember, two planes intersect in a
Line. So it's line L.
Any questions on this side? Alexander?
Where's the S?
S is this. So S is talking about the purple. On the test, it'll be more clear.
The bottom one is line L, right?
This here,
No,
Is the L?
on the-
yeah, that's an L. It's just like a cursive L. So it's talking about this line. Okay, find length of ZX. So how do we find the length?
The absolute value of negative 3 plus, minus 1.5.
Right. So you take the absolute value of the first point, Z, which is at negative 3, minus the absolute value of the second point, which is 1.5. And we would get the absolute value of negative 4.5, which would be equal to 4.5. So ZX is equal to 4.5. Remember, when you're talking about length, you don't put a segment on top of the two letters. Q is the midpoint of PR. PQ is 2Z. What do we do first when it doesn't give us the picture? We draw it out. So what would this be? A line or an angle or
A lot.
a line, right? Because it's talking about segment PR. So we have segment PR and Q is the midpoint. Already, what do we know about PQ and QR?
They're the same length.
They're the same length, so they're congruent. So we could put the tick marks in the middle. So we know PQ is 2Z. So then what would QR be? 2Z. And then the whole thing, PR, is equal to 8Z minus 12. So now what do we do?
Add the two. So 4 and Z equals 8. 8Z minus.
So we would add the two segments to get the whole segment. So we would do 2Z plus 2Z is equal to 8Z minus 12. So we would have 4Z is equal to 8Z minus 12. We can subtract the 8Z from both sides. So this would be negative 4Z is equal to negative 12. Divide by negative 4. And Z would be equal to 3. So we found Z, which the question is asking us to find Z. What else do we need to find?
Q and PR.
So how do we find PQ?
You have to you do 2 times 3.
So we would plug in the Z into PQ. So PQ is equal to 2 times 3, which would be 6. And how do we find PR?
So you put 3 into the Z, and so it would be 8 times 7. 8 times 3, which is 24. Minus 6 and 6.
We could also add 6 and 6, right? Because we know that PQ is 6 and QR is 6, so then the whole thing would be 12. Or we could take the Z and plug it into 8z minus 12, which would be PR is equal to 8 times 3 minus 12, which would be 12. So the keyword in this one is Q is the midpoint. Because when it tells us it's the midpoint, or if it tells us it bisects, we know that we have two equal parts. Any questions on this slide? D is between A and C. AC is 14 and BC is 11.4. Find AB. So what do we do first?
Draw it out.
Draw it out. If you get a question like this wrong on the test and don't draw it out, I'm going to be extremely upset. So it says B is between A and C, so it can be anywhere in between. We don't know if it's the midpoint, so we just put it anywhere in between. So AC, we're talking about the whole segment, is equal to 14, and BC, just BC, is 11.4. Find AB. So how do we find AB?
You have to do it 11.4 plus x equals 14.
So we could call AB X, and we would add the two segments and get the entire segment. So 11.4 plus x is equal to 14. And then we subtract 11.4. And x would be equal to 2.6. Another way we could do this is just take 14 and subtract 11.4. And that would give us 2.6. You can do it either way. Okay? So now we have E is between D and F. Find DF. So here we have the picture. So how do we start?
You start by making 3x minus 1 plus 13 equals 6x.
Yep. So we would do 3x minus 1 plus 13. So we add the two segments together and get the whole segment, which is 6x. So now we solve for x, and we would have 3x plus 12 is equal to 6x. 12 is equal to 3x. Divide each side by 3. So 4 is equal to x. Is that our answer? No, we have to take 4 and plug it back in to DF, which is the whole segment. So we plug it back into 6x. So DF is equal to 6 times 4, which is 24. Any questions on these two?
No.
Classify each angle as obtuse, acute, or right angle. So let's look at angle AOB. This would be acute. What makes an angle acute? Less than 90 degrees. What about DOB? Obtuse. Why is it obtuse? Because it's greater than 90 and less than 180. And what about DOC?
90.
It's 90, so what is it? A right angle. For this one, I forgot to write the other half of the question, but so let's say you have an angle that's 36 degrees and you bisect it. What would the two angles be that you just created?
Half of 36.
half of 36. So what would that be? 18 degrees. So if we had an angle that's 36 degrees and we bisect it, so we cut it in half into 2 equal parts, each part would be 18 degrees.
And when it's bisected, that means it's split like directly down the middle.
Directly down the middle. So when it says bisected, or if it says midpoint, it's exactly in the middle. But if it just says in between or in the interior, it could be anywhere in between. Any questions on this page?
Miss,
Mm-hmm. WY is between angle XWZ. The measure of XWZ is 121 and the measure of XWY is 50. So what do we do first?
Draw it out.
Draw it out. So we have angle XWZ and WY is in between. So XWZ, so now we're talking about the whole angle here, is 121. And XWY, so the blue angle, is equal to 50. So how would we find YWZ?
Yeah, we need to just subtract it.
So we could do 121 minus 50, and we would get 71 degrees. Or we could do 50, we could call XWZ x, so 50 plus x is equal to 121. And we would get x is equal to 71. So you could do it either way. So the measure of angle YWZ is equal to 71 degrees. I need to see that degree sign on the test, okay? JK bisects angle LJM. What do we do first?
Draw it out.
So we have LJM and JK bisects it. LJK is negative 10 plus 3. So LJK is negative 10 x plus 3. And KJM is negative x plus 21. So KJM is negative x plus 21. Find the measure of LJM. What do we do first?
Add them.
What was the second word in this question?
You said them equal twice.
Bisects. So we know that the green angle is congruent to the blue one, so we could put the little arc marks. So if they're congruent, what do?
You said them equal.
We set them equal to each other. So we would have negative 10x plus 3 is equal to negative x plus 21. So now we solve for x. We have negative 9x is equal to 18. So x is equal to negative 2. Is that our answer?
No.
No, we need to find angle LJM. So it's asking us for the whole angle, this yellow one. So we would take this, and we can plug it back into either one. We can plug it into this or JKM. But let's plug it into LJK, and we would get negative 10 times negative 2 plus 3. And that would be equal to 23. But that only gives us the green angle. So now let's find the blue one. we would do negative x plus, so negative 2 is x plus 21, and we would get 23. And how do we find LJM? We add them together. So the measure of angle LJM is equal to 46 degrees. So if BD bisects ABC, let's draw it out. We have angle ABC, and BD bisects it. So what do we know off the bat? They're congruent, because it bisects. The measure of ABD, so the one on top, is 30. Find the measure of ABC. So what do we know about DBC? That it's also 30 degrees. So how would we find the whole angle ABC? Add them. So the measure of angle ABC is equal to 60 degrees.
Is this like basically?
Tell whether the angles are only adjacent, adjacent and form a linear pair, or not adjacent. So let's look at angle 2 and 3. What do we think they are? They would be adjacent and form a linear pair. Because they're right next door, they share this line in between, and they form a straight line. What about angle 1 and angle 2? Angle 1 and angle 3. 1 and 3. They would be not adjacent because they don't share a side. So these are not adjacent. What about angle 3 and angle 4? These would be only adjacent because they're right next door and they don't form a straight line. So they are only adjacent. Last slide. If the measure of angle A is 72 degrees, what is the supplement of A? So we would do 180 minus 72. And that would be 108 degrees. Don't forget the degrees. So if the measure of angle B is 72, what's the complement of angle B?
You have to do
90 minus 72, and we get 18 degrees.